Some would have us believe we are standing on the cusp of a revolution in journalism based on the internet and the arrival of user-generated content. But are these revolutionary times that the journalism profession cannot ignore? Are we all now citizen journalists, or are we witnessing just another passing fad?
So much about citizen journalism and user-generated content. What to you is user-generated content?
I think, to me, user-generated content is content that web users have generated. I don't think there is such a thing as citizen journalism in the way that people would identify themselves as citizens who do journalism. I don't think people see it that way. So for me, user-generated content is anything that goes on the web, anything that people create, that other people see, that's just not generated by the mainstream media.
Anything that's been created by non-professionals, very, very broad really. Anything, any text, photos, audio, video, it doesn't really matter about the medium. It's the fact that it's come from users, been created by users.
It's been hyped out of all proportion. Clearly there are vested interests who would like us to believe that citizen journalism is going to be a revolution in journalism itself. I think a Reuters executive a few months ago talked about a golden age of journalism. Now, we've had golden ages of journalism for as long as I can remember, and I don't see anything golden or new about this particularly.
The most obvious user-generated content we get is our letters pages, which have been going for years and years and years and are really popular and a really good place for debate actually. Probably still more important to readers than the forums are, the actual online web forums. The letters pages are now uploaded to the web as well. So that's user-generated content. Then we get forums, blogs. We've got a number of blogs that are hosted on the Preston site on a whole range of different issues, from an American football one called the Lancashire Wolverines. It's a new American football club that started out. One called Stay at Home Dad, it's pretty obvious. Just a whole range. I've started one called The Recipe, where I encourage people to send in recipes. And the forums vary. We have forums on topical issues, recent news stories, Big Weekend forum. We have expats who for them I would say the forums are really important, because it's a way for people who live in different parts of the world but used to live in Preston to sort of reconnect and talk about whatever they want really.
What makes user-generated content different to, apart from the technology, from, for example, letters pages in newspapers? There's always been that kind of community interaction.
Yeah, that's true. I think user-generated content is different from letters pages in as different as it can be. You know, for a start, most user-generated content is honest. A lot of letters on letters pages aren't. You know, there's no editorial line for user-generated content. You don't need a letters page.
What would you say are some good examples of user-generated content being used in the media?
It's a difficult one, that one, because there are some defining ones. The footage from the Underground on 7/7 and various other defining what we call news moments. But for me, there are other defining bits of user-generated content out there, like the Numa song on YouTube. It's the stuff that's not necessarily news generated, but it's defining stuff for the content that's out there. So, you know, user-generated content, you could go all the way back to websites. There was an example a few years ago called Am I Hot or Not, where people would submit their pictures and they'd be rated as to whether they were hot or not. To me, that's user-generated content. It's something that people are interested in, that everybody engages with and everybody participates in. So for news and journalism, there are defining moments that have been identified as news that people have generated content around. But I don't really think they're necessarily defining moments in user-generated content.
Okay. Do you feel that it's made any contribution to either the quality of journalism or the declining interest in news?
I don't think it's made any contribution whatsoever to the so-called quality of journalism. If you're talking about day-to-day pictures of actual events. For example, let's take the Cutty Sark, which went up in smoke a few days ago. We saw an example of citizen journalism on the Daily Mail website. These were blurred pictures taken from a mobile phone. Fair enough, someone was there, someone took some pictures. Did they add anything to the actual dramatic effect? I'd say not. We've had citizen journalism, if you like, since the 30s, if not before. The best pictures of the R101 were taken by, quote, citizen journalists.
So why are people interested in contributing to local media organisations?
You know, being passionate about what they do. We've got a Lancashire writers blog that started recently, and the man who started it really just wanted a forum for people to come together, somewhere to publish their work and somewhere for other people who were interested in writing to comment on that work. So I suppose his motivation, the motivation of some of the writers are really, they've got a shared hobby, they like reading, they like writing, and it's a, you know, it's a group, it's of everybody's benefit to have that on the website where they can all interact and give advice, feedback.
What is the appeal of user-generated content to news organisations?
The benefit is more page impressions, and it is cost effective, I suppose, because we're getting more and more of it, and while, you know, I'm employed to do that, it doesn't take up a huge amount of time, and I do plenty of other things, so it's not taking up 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for me. Possibly it would do in the future, but then possibly in the future people would be able to upload it themselves. So I suppose the benefit is page impressions, I've already mentioned, but also getting the Lancashire Evening Post website more known in the community, reminding people about the Lancashire Evening Post paper via the web and the web via the paper. The two are very much interlinked. Branding, the LEP, what's popular, really.
How do you moderate that content and decide what goes on there? Because if you get a video in, how do you check that, you know, it's not breaking copyright laws?
Well, everything goes through me. We don't have a setup where people can upload their own content, so everything goes through me. And obviously, as with any delicate issue, if there was something I wasn't sure about, I'd always go through the editor or the digital editor, and you know, just check up on certain copyright law if I needed to make sure that, you know, I wasn't infringing any law.
Some journalists seem worried about this new revolution. Do you feel they should be?
I think they should be worried about it more from an ethical point of view as opposed to a cost-cutting point of view. It's clear that newspaper owners, publishers are always going to cut costs. It's a good way of keeping down costs. You get in free copy, you get in free pictures. The main thing is we've got to ask ourselves, are we encouraging people, the man in the street, to invade other people's privacy? Now, we as journalists are often accused of doing that. I fear that somewhere along the line people are going to overstep the mark. Journalists are trained to cover courts, councils, that sort of thing. They're trained to, you know, go out and meet people, behave in what might be called a responsible, ethical way. Are you going to train these citizen journalists to do that? Are you going to give them crash courses in law, council court reporting? Are you going to train them to differentiate what is the difference perhaps between news and rumour? Remember the old adage that rumour is halfway around the world before truth has got its boots on. So there are a lot of ethical problems.
Everything we've seen shows that there is no doubt that the age of user-generated content is upon us. It isn't just a passing fad. Gone are the days when the only way a citizen could take part in a debate was writing to the letters page of his newspaper. Now he can send in his pictures, his videos, or even start his own blog and debate what he wants. Yes, there are problems with all of this, but there is no question that if journalists should use the content, but how? Critics argue that eventually there will be too much user-generated content and we won't be able to tell fact from fiction. It is not in the interest of the media to scramble after user-generated content. They should let YouTube be YouTube. There will always be an audience for well-produced media products. and pursuing the YouTube model or the Google model will not get media organisations anywhere. Overall, user-generated content is a bit of a buzzword, but the media need to emphasise their MGC, media-generated content, and the professionalism that this brings.